I am Samantha, 34 years old, and until last month, I was a dedicated account manager at Meridian Technologies for 10 years. My handwritten client notes were my secret weapon until Jackson Reed, our arrogant new VP, called them outdated and embarrassing. He fired me for being old-fashioned, not knowing my notebooks contained critical information about our $40 million Quantum Global account. When he lost that deal, our CEO finally read what was on page 1. Before I dive into this workplace drama, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy stories about corporate justice, and stick around to see how my decade of detailed notes saved the day. My journey at Meridian Technologies began right after college. Fresh-faced and eager, I joined as a junior associate with big dreams but little experience. Meridian was a small startup then fighting for recognition in the competitive tech solutions market. We had fewer than 50 employees, a cramped office with mismatched furniture, and the unstable internet connection that seemed to cut out precisely when important client calls came through. What we lacked in resources we made up for in passion and innovation. During my first week, my supervisor handed me a leather-bound notebook. Document everything, she advised. Your memory will fail you, but your notes never will. That simple advice shaped my entire career approach. While others relied solely on digital tools, I developed a comprehensive note-taking system involving dedicated notebooks for each major client. Each one was color-coded by project type, with sticky tabs for quick reference. Blue tabs for technical requirements, yellow for budget discussions, green for timeline commitments, and red for any concerns or potential issues. My colleagues initially teased me about my meticulous handwritten records. "We have computers for that," they would joke. But over time, they came to appreciate how I could instantly pull out detailed conversation notes from months earlier, complete with context and emotional cues that sterile digital records never captured. I could recall not just what clients said, but how they said it, their hesitations, their enthusiasm, and the unspoken concerns behind their questions. As Meridian grew, so did my responsibilities. I climbed from junior associate to account coordinator, then to account manager, and finally to senior account manager, overseeing our most valuable client relationships. My notebooks grew in number 2, filling an entire bookshelf in my office, organized chronologically and by client name. 10 years of institutional knowledge, relationship building, and problem solving, all preserved in my distinctive handwriting. Diane Johnson became my mentor during my second year. A veteran in client relations, she recognized my attention to detail and took me under her wing. "Client relationships are built on remembered details," she often said. "Remember their kids' names, their hobbies, their challenges, and you will build trust that technology alone cannot create." Under her guidance, I learned to translate my detailed notes into meaningful client experiences. Andrew Thompson joined my team 5 years ago, bringing technical expertise that complemented my relationship skills. We made an excellent team, with Andrew handling complex technical implementations, while I managed client expectations and communication. Rebecca Chen became my assistant 2 years ago, quickly learning my systems and adding her own organizational talents to our workflow. Before the recent changes, Meridian had a culture that valued relationships over transactions. Our CEO, Eleanor, built the company on the principle that technology should enhance human connection, not replace it. We celebrated both technical innovation and personal touch, recognizing that our clients chose us not just for our solutions, but for how we delivered them. Everything changed 18 months ago when Global Tech acquired Meridian. The acquisition brought much-needed capital and expanded our market reach, but it also brought corporate pressure and a board focused more on quarterly results than long-term relationships. Eleanor remained as CEO, but her authority was increasingly constrained by board mandates pushing for rapid modernization and digital transformation. Among our most valuable client relationships was Quantum Global, an international financial services firm I had carefully cultivated for 3 years. From our first meeting, I recognized their unique concerns about data security and regulatory compliance across multiple countries. My notebooks for Quantum were the most detailed in my collection, documenting their complex organizational structure, the individual preferences of each decision-maker, and their absolute requirement for on-premise security solutions due to strict regulatory frameworks in the European and Asian markets they served. My most recent notes from meetings with Quantum contained explicit warnings about their growing concerns regarding cloud-based solutions. Thomas Harrington, their Chief Information Security Officer, had confidentially shared their internal policy, prohibiting certain types of data from being stored on third-party servers. We simply cannot risk regulatory noncompliance, he had told me during our last lunch meeting. Any solution we implement must maintain data sovereignty within each operating country. I had documented this conversation in detail, along with his comment that competing vendors were already pushing cloud solutions that Quantum had firmly rejected. These notes would prove critically important, though I did not realize how important until after Jackson Reed arrived with his aggressive modernization agenda. The notes I had meticulously recorded over years were about to become the center of a corporate drama that would cost Meridian a $40 million opportunity, end a rising executive career, and ultimately redefine my own professional journey in ways I never anticipated. Jackson Reed arrived at Meridian with the dramatic flair of a conquering hero. The all-hands meeting announcing his appointment as our new Vice President of Client Solutions was held in the largest conference room, which still barely contained our growing staff. Eleanor introduced him with carefully measured enthusiasm, emphasizing his Silicon Valley background and track record of digital transformation at several high-profile tech companies. Jackson took the stage with confident energy, his tailored suit and designer glasses projecting the image of success and innovation. The future is digital, the future is integrated, and the future is now, he proclaimed, pacing the room like a motivational speaker. Companies that cling to outdated methods will be left behind. Under my leadership, Meridian will not be one of them. His presentation outlined an aggressive modernization strategy centered around a new customer relationship management system that would bring Meridian into the 21st century. The platform would integrate all client communications, proposals, and project management into a single digital ecosystem that would eliminate inefficiencies and human error. The unspoken implication was clear: traditional methods, including my own, were being classified as inefficient and error-prone. Our first department meeting with Jackson occurred the following Monday. We gathered in the conference room, each team member preparing to present their current projects and client relationships. When my turn came, I opened my Quantum Global notebook to reference specific details about their upcoming contract renewal. Jackson interrupted me before I could finish my first sentence. "Are those handwritten notes?" he asked, his tone somewhere between amusement and disbelief. "Yes," I replied. "I keep detailed records of all client interactions and preferences." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "How quaint. I have not seen anyone use paper notebooks since, well, I cannot remember when." His comment drew uncomfortable laughter from a few colleagues, eager to align themselves with his apparent authority. "I find they help me capture nuances that might get lost in digital formats," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "Clients appreciate that I can recall specific details from our conversations." "Well, moving forward, all client information needs to be in the CRM," Jackson stated firmly. "If it is not in the system, it does not exist. No exceptions." The new CRM implementation began the following week with mandatory training sessions. The system was comprehensive but rigid, with structured fields that often failed to capture the qualitative aspects of client relationships. We were instructed to document all client interactions exclusively through the platform, with strict compliance requirements and weekly audits. I tried to adapt entering basic information into the CRM, while maintaining my notebooks for the details that did not fit neatly into predefined fields. This dual approach kept me working late most evenings, essentially documenting everything twice. Despite my efforts, Jackson seemed to take particular notice of my notebooks whenever he passed my office, often making comments loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. "Still using stone tablets, Samantha?" he asked one afternoon as he paused at my doorway. "You know we have electricity and computers now, right?" Within his first month, Jackson formed what he called his innovation team, a select group of mostly newer employees who embraced his vision without question. Veteran staff with deep client knowledge were increasingly sidelined from strategic discussions. My supervisor, Michael Williams, who had supported my methods for years, found himself excluded from key meetings and decision-making processes. "Just play along," Michael advised me privately after I expressed frustration. "This modernization push comes directly from the board. We need to adapt or we will be seen as obstacles." The first warning signs of trouble appeared when several smaller clients began expressing dissatisfaction with our new standardized approach. The personalized attention they had valued was being replaced by automated workflows and generic templates. When I brought these concerns to our weekly staff meeting, Jackson dismissed them. Change management always includes some resistance, he said. These clients will appreciate the efficiency once they adjust to modern methods. We cannot hold back progress because a few people prefer the comfort of outdated practices. His response labeled both our clients and those of us raising concerns as essentially backward thinking, making further discussion difficult. Those who pushed back too strongly found themselves marginalized or assigned to less desirable accounts. The message became clear: embrace Jackson's vision, or become irrelevant. The situation reached a critical point when Quantum Global began discussions about a major expansion of their services with Meridian, potentially worth $40 million over 5 years. This opportunity represented not just significant revenue, but also the possibility of expanding into new international markets with Quantum as a reference client. During a leadership meeting to discuss the Quantum opportunity, Jackson made an unexpected announcement. "I will personally take over the Quantum Global relationship," he stated. "This account is too important to leave to chance. We need to showcase our most innovative solutions." I was stunned. "With all due respect," I said, trying to keep my voice professional, "I have managed the Quantum relationship for 3 years. I understand their specific needs and concerns, particularly regarding security requirements." Jackson smiled with manufactured patience. "Precisely why we need fresh eyes, Samantha. Your familiarity might be limiting your vision of what we can offer them. Sometimes being too close to a client means you cannot see the bigger opportunities." The meeting continued, but the decision had clearly been made. Jackson would lead the Quantum proposal, with my role reduced to providing background information as requested. As the team filed out afterward, I felt a growing sense of dread. Jackson had never even met anyone from Quantum, yet he was dismissing 3 years of relationship building as if it were irrelevant. Later that week, I attempted to share specific insights about Quantum's security requirements, bringing my notebooks to Jackson's office. Their CISO has explicitly stated that they cannot use cloud-based solutions for certain data categories, I explained, referencing my detailed notes from recent conversations. Jackson barely glanced at the pages I had opened to the relevant sections. "Every client says that initially," he said with dismissive confidence. "They just need to be educated about modern security protocols. Our cloud solution is the cornerstone of our value proposition. Trust me, I have converted much larger clients than Quantum." His refusal to consider Quantum's specific requirements was more than frustrating, it was potentially damaging to the relationship I had carefully built. As I returned to my office, clutching my notebooks that contained the warnings Jackson refused to hear, I could not shake the feeling that we were heading toward a preventable disaster. The strategy meeting for the Quantum Global presentation was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Jackson had assembled his innovation team along with a few veteran staff members, presumably to give the appearance of collaborative planning. I arrived 5 minutes early with my Quantum notebooks colored tabs, marking the pages with relevant information about each decision-maker who would attend the presentation. Jackson began by unveiling his vision for the presentation, a sleek digital transformation package centered around cloud-based integration across all of Quantum's international offices. His slides showcased cutting-edge technology with impressive graphics and ambitious promises of efficiency improvements. "Our primary selling point will be the unified cloud architecture," Jackson explained, his voice brimming with confidence. "Their current segmented approach is costing them millions in duplicate systems. We will demonstrate how our solution streamlines everything while reducing their overall infrastructure footprint." I raised my hand, waiting to be acknowledged. When Jackson finally nodded in my direction with visible reluctance, I opened my notebook to the tabbed section containing my notes from my last meeting with Thomas Harrington, Quantum's CISO. "I believe we should reconsider the cloud-first approach," I suggested carefully. "In my most recent conversations with their security team, they specifically mentioned regulatory requirements that prevent certain data categories from being stored on third-party servers. They need on-premise solutions for their European and Asian operations due to data sovereignty laws." Jackson's expression hardened. "Those objections are based on outdated understanding of cloud security," he countered. "Part of our job is to educate clients about modern best practices, not reinforce their technological paranoia." "It is not about paranoia." I persisted, flipping to another tabbed page. "They operate under strict regulatory frameworks in multiple countries. Their legal team has explicit policies against certain types of cloud storage for financial data. If we push a primarily cloud-based solution, we will be effectively disqualifying ourselves. The room grew uncomfortable as Jackson and I locked eyes. Several team members shifted nervously in their seats, looking anywhere but at either of us. "Your notes," Jackson said, emphasizing the word with thinly veiled contempt, "are. From what 3 months ago, technology evolves faster than your handwriting can capture it. The presentation strategy has been approved. We are moving forward with the cloud solution as our centerpiece." I felt my professional reputation and the client relationship I had nurtured both hanging in the balance. "At least let me arrange a preliminary call with Thomas before the presentation," I suggested. "We can validate their current position on cloud storage requirements." Jackson's patience visibly evaporated. "Enough, Samantha. Your attachment to these Stone Age methods and resistance to our modern approach is becoming problematic. I am leading this presentation. The strategy is set." He turned to the rest of the team. "Let us continue without further interruptions." For the remainder of the meeting, I sat in stunned silence, watching as Jackson assigned presentation sections to his innovation team members, none of whom had ever met anyone from Quantum. My notebooks filled with critical client intelligence remained unused on the table in front of me. As the meeting concluded, Jackson asked me to stay behind. "Your behavior today was inappropriate and undermining," he stated once we were alone. "I have tried to be patient with your adjustment to our new methods, but you seem determined to resist progress." "I am trying to provide accurate client information," I defended myself. "That is literally my job as the account manager." "Your job is to support the strategic direction set by leadership," Jackson countered. "Instead, you contradict me in team meetings and cling to outdated practices that reflect poorly on our company's image. How do you think it looks to new clients when you pull out paper notebooks while everyone else is using state-of-the-art digital tools? Clients appreciate that I remember their specific concerns and preferences," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. "The method matters less than the results." Jackson shook his head. "That mentality is exactly the problem. Methods define results in this industry. Meridian is modernizing with or without you. I suggest you decide which side of progress you want to stand on." I left his office that day with a sick feeling in my stomach. The confrontation had escalated beyond professional disagreement into personal territory. Jackson was not just dismissing my methods, he was questioning my value to the company I had helped build for a decade. The following morning, I had just settled at my desk when my phone rang with a request to come to the Human Resources Department. Walking through the office, I caught sympathetic glances from several colleagues suggesting they knew something I did not. When I entered the HR conference room, Jackson was already seated beside Patricia from HR, a folder placed neatly in front of him. "Please sit down, Samantha," Patricia said, her professional tone doing little to mask the tension in the room. Jackson spoke first. "After careful consideration of your recent performance and alignment with company direction, we have determined that your position at Meridian is being terminated effective immediately." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Terminated? On what grounds?" Patricia slid a document across the table. "The official reason is cultural fit concerns following the company's digital transformation initiative. Your severance package is outlined here along with non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreements that must be signed to receive the benefits." "This is about yesterday's meeting," I stated, looking directly at Jackson. "Because I raised valid concerns about a client's requirements. This is about an ongoing pattern of resistance to necessary change," Jackson replied smoothly. "Meridian needs team members who embrace our vision of technological leadership, not those who anchor us to outdated methodologies." Patricia interjected before I could respond. "You will have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Carl from security will accompany you to your office and then escort you from the building. Company devices and any client information must remain on premises." "My notebooks," I said, suddenly realizing the implications. "They contain 10 years of client information." "Any handwritten notes you created during company time technically belong to Meridian," Jackson stated. "However, as they represent an outdated information storage method with limited value to our digital operations, you may take them as part of your personal effects." His dismissive characterization of my meticulous records as having limited value stung almost as much as the termination itself. In that moment, I realized Jackson did not just want to modernize Meridian, he wanted to erase any evidence of successful methods that contradicted his vision. The walk to my office with Carl from security watching silently was perhaps the most humiliating experience of my professional life. Colleagues peeked over cubicle walls or quickly diverted their eyes as I passed. After 10 years of dedicated service, I was being treated like a security threat. I mechanically packed my personal items, including the shelf of client notebooks, into cardboard boxes. Rebecca appeared at my office door, her eyes wide with distress. "I cannot believe this is happening," she whispered, glancing nervously at Carl. "This is so wrong." "It will be okay," I assured her, though I felt anything but certain. "Take care of yourself. Keep your head down." Andrew managed to pass by, ostensibly heading to the break room. "This is Jackson's ego, not your performance," he murmured. "We all know that." With my boxes packed, Carl escorted me through the side exit to avoid the main reception area. The final indignity was surrendering my access card before being directed to my car in the parking garage. As I loaded the boxes containing a decade of my professional life into my trunk, the reality began to sink in. I was unemployed, potentially blacklisted within our industry by a vindictive executive, and leaving behind clients who would not even know why I had suddenly disappeared. The drive home remains a blur in my memory. Traffic lights, other cars, even the radio playing softly in the background all seemed distant and irrelevant. My thoughts circled relentlessly. How had my career at Meridian ended so abruptly? How would I explain this termination to future employers? And most persistently, what would happen with the Quantum Global presentation now that their account manager of 3 years was gone? Little did I know that my detailed notebooks, the very tools that Jackson had mocked and dismissed, would soon become the center of a corporate drama that would vindicate my methods in ways I could never have anticipated. The first week after my termination passed in a fog of disbelief and emotional turmoil. I fluctuated between anger, humiliation, and anxiety about my financial future. My routine, structured for 10 years around my role at Meridian, suddenly had no foundation. I found myself reaching for a notebook to document thoughts or ideas, only to remember that I no longer had clients whose needs required my detailed records. By the second week, practical concerns began to overshadow the emotional impact. I updated my resume and reached out to industry contacts, only to discover that finding a new position might be more challenging than anticipated. 2 promising leads suddenly went cold after reference checks, suggesting that Jackson was perhaps sharing his negative assessment of my resistance to innovation with potential employers. As my savings account balance steadily decreased, I started exploring options outside my specialized field, even considering temporary office work to maintain some income, while continuing my search for a permanent position. The employment gap on my resume grew wider each day, making explanations to recruiters increasingly awkward. 3 weeks after my termination, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by my Meridian notebooks. Initially, I had avoided looking at them as they represented both a decade of dedication and the ultimate cause of my downfall. Now I turned to them as resources for updating my portfolio with specific examples of successful client management strategies, carefully anonymizing the details to respect confidentiality agreements. As I reviewed the Quantum Global notebooks, I was struck again by the explicit warnings I had documented about their security requirements. Thomas Harrington's comments about data sovereignty were highlighted with a red tab along with his direct statement. Any vendor proposing cloud storage for our regulated financial data will immediately be disqualified from consideration, regardless of other solution benefits. I had underlined this twice and added asterisks in the margin to emphasize its importance. The following day, I received an unexpected text message from Andrew Jackson, completely revamped the quantum approach. All cloud-based now. Nobody consulted your notes. Presentation in 1 week. Team concerned, but nobody brave enough to speak up after what happened to you. My stomach tightened reading his message. Despite my termination, I still cared deeply about Meridian and the client relationships I had built. The thought of Jackson's arrogance potentially costing the company a $40 million opportunity created a genuine ethical dilemma. Should I attempt to warn someone about the impending disaster? I tried calling Michael, my former supervisor, but my calls went straight to voicemail. His position had likely become even more precarious after my firing, and associating with me might endanger his own job security. I sent a carefully worded email instead, framing my concern in terms of client satisfaction rather than criticism of Jackson's approach. No response came. 4 days before the scheduled quantum presentation, Rebecca agreed to meet me for coffee at a shop across town, far from any location where Meridian employees typically gathered. She arrived looking stressed and furtively checked the other patrons before sitting down. "Everyone is walking on eggshells," she reported in a hushed voice. "Jackson has taken complete control of the quantum presentation. He will not tolerate any suggestion that the cloud approach might be problematic." "Has anyone reviewed my notes about their security requirements?" I asked. Rebecca shook her head. "Your notebooks are still in a box under your old desk. No one has touched them. Jackson keeps saying he is going to revolutionize how quantum approaches data management, that he will open their eyes to modern solutions." "What about Eleanor? Surely she would not approve of ignoring explicit client requirements on such an important account." "Eleanor has been tied up with board meetings in New York all month. Jackson reports directly to her, but she has been hands-off with the quantum proposal, trusting his Silicon Valley experience." Rebecca glanced at her watch nervously. "I should get back. They are tracking lunch breaks now to measure productivity." After Rebecca left, I sat considering my options. The right thing to do seemed clear, yet the professional risks were substantial. If I reached out to Quantum directly, I would likely be violating my non-disclosure agreement. If I tried to warn Meridian leadership, I might be accused of sabotage or sour grapes. Eventually, I decided that a direct appeal to Eleanor Wright was my only ethical option. Though we had not worked closely together in recent years as the company grew, she had always maintained an open-door policy and valued client relationships above all else. If anyone would listen to legitimate concerns about the quantum approach, it would be her. I returned home and carefully selected the most relevant pages from my quantum notebooks. I photographed them clearly, ensuring that Thomas Harrington's explicit statements about cloud security were legible along with dates and context. I then composed a detailed email to Eleanor, being careful to frame my message as concern for Meridian's success rather than criticism of Jackson personally. As the account manager who built the quantum relationship over 3 years, I wrote, "I feel professionally obligated to share critical information that may impact the upcoming presentation. My detailed notes from recent meetings with their CISO indicate absolute restrictions on cloud-based solutions for certain data categories. Proceeding with a primarily cloud-based proposal may jeopardize both this opportunity and our broader relationship with Quantum Global." I attached the photographed notebook pages as evidence, then hesitated before hitting send. Was I overstepping? Would this appear as the desperate action of a terminated employee seeking revenge? After rereading the email several times, I decided the potential benefit to Meridian outweighed my personal concerns. I pressed send and watched the message disappear into the digital ether, unsure if it would even reach Eleanor through corporate filters. No response came that day or the next. As the quantum presentation drew closer, I considered my nuclear option, contacting Thomas Harrington directly. We had developed a good professional relationship over 3 years, and he would likely want to know about the misalignment between Quantum's requirements and Meridian's planned proposal. However, such direct client contact after termination would almost certainly violate my severance agreement and could expose me to legal action. I decided to wait 1 more day for a response from Eleanor before considering more drastic measures. That evening, I organized my job search materials and practiced interview responses, trying to focus on moving forward rather than dwelling on the quantum situation. Still, as I prepared for bed, I could not shake the image of Jackson confidently presenting exactly the wrong solution to a client whose specific needs I understood better than anyone at Meridian. The morning of the Quantum Global presentation arrived, with no response from Eleanor Wright. I had resigned myself to the likelihood that my warning email had either been filtered out by corporate systems or deliberately ignored. As I scrolled through job listings at my kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Presentation starting now. Full quantum executive team present. Jackson looking confident as ever. Will update when I can." I set my phone aside, trying not to obsess over a situation I could no longer control. Still, every few minutes I found myself checking for updates. 45 minutes later, Rebecca texted again. "Jackson going all in on cloud integration. showing impressive graphics about centralized data management. Quantum team exchanging looks. I could picture the scene clearly. Jackson impeccably dressed and radiating confidence, unveiling his vision of technological transformation while missing the subtle signals of client discomfort. The quantum executives would be too professional to interrupt with objections, instead reserving their concerns for private discussion after the presentation. Another text arrived 20 minutes later. Thomas H. just asked directly about data sovereignty compliance in EU countries. Jackson said, "Cloud solution includes regional partitioning that satisfies all regulations." Thomas does not look convinced. My stomach tightened. Thomas Harrington was not someone who asked questions he did not already know the answer to. His query was likely a professional courtesy, giving Meridian an opportunity to acknowledge the limitations of cloud storage for certain data categories before he had to reject the proposal outright. Jackson showing slide about outdated security concerns. Rebecca's next text read, basically saying companies that avoid cloud are operating on fear, not facts. Some quantum people writing notes furiously. I winced reading this. Jackson was not just proposing an inappropriate solution, he was essentially calling Quantum's established security policies outdated and irrational. For a financial services firm operating under strict regulatory frameworks, such dismissiveness about compliance concerns would be not just offensive but alarming. The updates continued over the next hour, painting an increasingly dire picture. CFO asked about specific security protocols for financial data stored in cloud. Jackson gave very general answer about encryption. Thomas asked about physical server locations and access controls. Jackson said that is old thinking. The whole point is data flows freely across secure network. Meeting atmosphere getting tense. Quantum CEO keeps looking at his watch. Finally, the most ominous update arrived. Meeting ended 30 minutes earlier than scheduled. Quantum team said they need to discuss internally before further conversation. Jackson, still confident, told us in hallway he thinks they were impressed by our forward-thinking approach. I set my phone down, a mixture of vindication and genuine concern washing over me. Jackson's refusal to consider quantum-specific requirements was about to cost Meridian dearly, but I took no pleasure in the damage this would cause to the company and colleagues I still cared about. Throughout the afternoon, Rebecca sent sporadic updates about the atmosphere at the office. The team was gathered in the main conference room, ostensibly preparing follow-up materials while actually waiting for Quantum's response. Jackson maintained his confident demeanor, assuring everyone that initial client hesitation was normal when presented with transformative solutions. Clients often need time to process innovative approaches, he reportedly told the team. They will come around once they discuss the long-term benefits internally. At 4:15 in the afternoon, just when many employees were beginning to think about ending their workday, Rebecca's most dramatic update arrived. Quantum CFO just called Jackson directly. His face went white during the call. Now he is locked in his office with blinds closed. 30 minutes later, the other shoe dropped. Emergency company meeting called. Jackson announced, Quantum is declining to proceed with expanded services discussion. Says they are taking a step back to reassess their modernization strategy. The carefully constructed phrasing could not disguise the catastrophic reality. Quantum Global had rejected Meridian's proposal entirely. The $40 million opportunity was gone, along with the 3-year relationship I had carefully built. Rebecca's updates continued as the office situation deteriorated. Jackson blaming presentation team for inadequate technical details. Says we failed to properly explain security protocols. Just learned Quantum is already in discussions with next-gen solutions about alternative approach. How did they line up a competitor so quickly? The answer to her question was obvious to me. Quantum had likely already been in preliminary discussions with multiple vendors, including next-gen, while giving Meridian the inside track based on our established relationship. When Jackson's presentation revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of their requirements, they simply accelerated conversations with the competitor who better understood their needs. The final update from Rebecca that evening landed like a bombshell. Board called emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Eleanor Wright returned early from New York. Rumors flying that Jackson's position is in jeopardy. He is still here frantically pulling together justification materials. Just heard him ask IT to access your old emails and notes. The mention of my notes sent a chill through me. After dismissing my detailed records as worthless, Jackson was now desperately searching for information that might help him salvage the situation. But the most critical insights were in my handwritten notebooks, which had remained untouched under my former desk, according to Rebecca. As night fell, I found myself in the strange position of mourning the loss of the quantum relationship while awaiting news about potential fallout for Jackson. I had documented everything that might have prevented this disaster, tried to warn the appropriate people, and been ignored and terminated for my efforts. Now all I could do was wait to see how Meridian would respond to the crisis Jackson had created through his arrogance and dismissal of institutional knowledge. Rebecca's final text that night was brief, but telling Eleanor, asking to see all communication with Quantum from past 6 months. Someone mentioned your detailed notes. Will update when I know more. I went to bed that night, with swirling emotions, sympathy for my former colleagues caught in the crisis, concern for Meridian's reputation and financial health, and yes, a small but undeniable sense of validation that my methods and warnings had been proven correct, though at a terrible cost to the company I had helped build. 3 days passed with minimal updates from Meridian. Rebecca mentioned only that multiple closed-door meetings were occurring, with Eleanor Wright personally reviewing all quantum communications. Andrew reported that Jackson was still coming to the office but appeared increasingly isolated, with few team members willing to be seen in his presence. On the morning of the 4th day after the failed presentation, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. When I answered, Eleanor Wright's distinctive voice caught me by surprise. "Samantha? This is Eleanor. I hope I am not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied, trying to sound composed despite my racing heart. "I would like to meet with you today if possible, somewhere private away from the office. Would that be acceptable to you?" We arranged to meet at a small cafe in a neighboring town, a location unlikely to be frequented by Meridian employees. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a secluded table in the back corner. Eleanor arrived precisely on time, her usual polished appearance slightly dimmed by evident fatigue. After ordering coffee, Eleanor got straight to the point. "I received your email warning about the quantum presentation," she began. "Unfortunately, it was flagged by our system and held in a quarantine folder due to your terminated status. I did not see it until after the presentation had already occurred." "I understand," I said, though the knowledge that my warning could have prevented the disaster stung freshly. "I have spent the past 3 days reviewing everything related to the quantum account," Eleanor continued. "Your notebooks, which Rebecca helped locate, have been particularly illuminating. The explicit warnings from Thomas Harrington about cloud storage restrictions were documented clearly and repeatedly." She sighed deeply before continuing. "Samantha, I owe you an apology. Your termination was executed without my knowledge or approval while I was dealing with board matters in New York. Jackson had the authority to make personnel decisions, but this should have come to me given your tenure in client relationships." "Thank you for saying that," I responded, unsure what else to add. "The quantum situation has created a serious crisis for Meridian," Eleanor admitted. "Not just the loss of the $40 million opportunity, but the potential damage to our reputation. They were our most prestigious financial services client." "What happened with the presentation?" I asked, curious to hear her perspective. "A complete misalignment with client requirements," Eleanor said bluntly. "Jackson presented a cloud-first solution to a client that had explicitly rejected such approaches. When questioned about compliance and data sovereignty, he essentially dismissed their concerns as outdated thinking. According to the Quantum CEO, who called me personally yesterday, Jackson came across as arrogant and dismissive of their regulatory environment. The confirmation of my worst fears brought no satisfaction. I tried to warn him several times about their security requirements." "Yes, that is abundantly clear from your notes and from interviews with team members," Eleanor acknowledged. "What is equally clear is that Jackson created a culture where questioning his approach was treated as resistance to progress rather than valuable client insight." She paused, taking a sip of her coffee before delivering the news I had suspected was coming. "Jackson Reed is no longer employed by Meridian, effective as of yesterday afternoon." The statement hung in the air between us. Jackson's meteoric rise at Meridian had ended after less than 3 months, undone by the very arrogance and dismissiveness that had initially propelled him to power. "We are trying to salvage the relationship with Quantum," Eleanor continued. "I have spoken directly with their CEO and CISO, apologizing for the misalignment and explaining the personnel changes we have made. They have agreed to reconsider Meridian for future projects, but the immediate opportunity has been lost to Next General. I nodded, processing the information. I am sorry about the lost opportunity. Quantum was an important client. Which brings me to the reason for this meeting, Eleanor said, leaning forward slightly. Thomas Harrington specifically asked about you during our call. He was surprised and disappointed by your sudden disappearance from the account. When I explained the circumstances, he made it clear that your relationship with their team was a significant factor in their trust of Meridian. She placed her coffee cup down deliberately. Samantha, I would like you to consider returning to Meridian. The offer caught me completely off guard. Returning. Yes, but not to your previous position, Eleanor clarified. In reviewing this situation, it has become clear that we need someone at the executive level who truly understands our client relationships and can balance technological advancement with client requirements. I would like you to join our leadership team as the new Vice President of Client Relations. My mind raced, cycling through conflicting emotions: vindication, lingering hurt, uncertainty about returning to a workplace where I had been so publicly dismissed, and genuine affection for the company I had helped build over a decade. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I would need time to consider it. The termination was difficult. Of course, Eleanor nodded. Take whatever time you need, and please know that the offer comes with a significant compensation adjustment and full authority over client relationship strategies. I promised to consider the offer and let her know my decision within a week. As we parted, Eleanor added one final comment. Whether you decide to return or not, I want you to know that your methods and instincts were proven absolutely correct. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from sources that seem outdated in our digital age. Meridian lost sight of that temporarily to our considerable cost. Driving home, I called Thomas Harrington, my primary contact at Quantum. The conversation was both professional and warmly personal, with Thomas expressing genuine concern about my sudden departure from Meridian. You were the one person there who truly understood our regulatory environment, he said. When that new VP started dismissing our security requirements as paranoia, I knew something had gone seriously wrong at Meridian. Would Quantum consider working with Meridian again? I asked cautiously. With the right team in place, absolutely, Thomas replied. Our history with Meridian was largely positive until this recent situation. If you were to return and lead the relationship, that would certainly influence our willingness to reconsider future opportunities. Over the next few days, I consulted with family and trusted friends about the offer. The consensus was generally positive, particularly with the significant promotion and explicit vindication of my methods. Still, returning to a workplace where I had been so recently escorted out by security raised emotional concerns that could not be dismissed merely with title and salary improvements. I developed a list of conditions for my potential return: complete authority over client relationship strategies, a public acknowledgement of the value of diverse information management approaches, retention of my notebook method alongside appropriate digital documentation, and a company-wide review of how client information was being captured and utilized in the new systems. 1 week after our cafe meeting, I met with Eleanor again to discuss my decision. To my surprise, she not only accepted all my conditions, but had already begun implementing several of them in anticipation of my return. The Quantum situation was painful and expensive, she admitted, but it has sparked a necessary reevaluation of our modernization approach. Technology should enhance human relationships, not replace the personal insights that build client trust. With my conditions accepted and a clear path forward established, I agreed to return to Meridian in my new executive role beginning the following Monday. As I signed the paperwork, Eleanor smiled for the first time in our recent interactions. Sometimes the most expensive business lessons are the most valuable, she observed. In this case, a $40 million mistake taught us to value the right voices regardless of whether they use digital tools or paper notebooks. My first day back at Meridian as Vice President of Client Relations created quite a stir. Many employees did a double take seeing me walk through the front entrance wearing an executive badge rather than being escorted out by security. Reactions ranged from enthusiastic welcomes to awkward avoidances, with a few of Jackson's most loyal supporters visibly uncomfortable with my return in a position of greater authority. Eleanor had scheduled a company-wide meeting for 10 o'clock that morning. Standing before the assembled staff, she addressed the quantum situation directly without corporate euphemisms or attempts to minimize the failure. Mistakes were made in how we approached a key client relationship, she stated clearly. Those mistakes cost us a $40 million opportunity and damaged a valuable partnership. More importantly, they revealed flaws in our communication structure and in how we value different types of institutional knowledge. She then introduced me in my new role, explaining that my return represented a recommitment to client-centered relationships balanced with appropriate technological advancement. Samantha brings 10 years of deep client knowledge back to our leadership team, along with a proven system for capturing the nuances that technology alone cannot record. Taking the podium, I felt a momentary flutter of nervousness facing colleagues who had witnessed my humiliating departure just weeks earlier. I had prepared extensive remarks but decided in that moment to speak from the heart instead. Successful client relationships require both innovative technology and human insight, I began. My return to Meridian is not about choosing between old and new methods, but about creating a balanced approach that serves our clients' best interests, rather than our technological preferences. Over the following weeks, I worked with our technology team to develop a hybrid information management system that preserved the flexibility of my notebook method while ensuring critical information was accessible in digital formats. We created a standardized process for transferring qualitative insights from personal notes into the CRM, with special fields for regulatory requirements, cultural preferences, and relationship nuances. Rebuilding trust with the quantum team required honesty and patience. In our first meeting after my return, I acknowledged the presentation failure directly. We got it wrong, I told Thomas Harrington and his team. We prioritized our vision of innovation over your clearly stated requirements. That will not happen again under my leadership. The transparency of this approach, along with Eleanor's personal involvement, gradually repaired the damaged relationship. 3 months after the failed presentation, Quantum agreed to a smaller but still significant contract for specific security services, with potential for expansion if the implementation met their standards. While not the $40 million opportunity we had lost, it represented a second chance that many clients would not have offered. As for Jackson Reed, industry rumors suggested he was struggling to secure another executive position as word of the quantum disaster spread through professional networks. While I took no pleasure in his difficulties, I recognized the necessary market correction occurring as companies learned about his dismissive approach to client requirements and institutional knowledge. On a personal level, the experience transformed my leadership philosophy. I became a strong advocate for diverse working styles within Meridian, recognizing that different team members processed and communicated information in ways that might not fit standardized templates but still created tremendous value. We implemented a recognition program, specifically highlighting institutional knowledge and relationship building, celebrating the often invisible work that maintained client trust across years of service. The healing process extended beyond professional structures to rebuilding company culture. Many employees who had felt silenced or marginalized during Jackson's brief tenure gradually regained their confidence in sharing client insights and raising concerns about strategic directions. Team morale improved as people recognized that both technological proficiency and relationship skills were valued in our new balanced approach. Throughout this journey, I kept a special notebook documenting my observations and lessons learned. The experience had taught me that standing firm for proven methods while remaining open to appropriate innovation was not just professionally sound, but ethically necessary when client interests were at stake. I had learned that institutional knowledge, often dismissed in our culture of technological disruption, represented an invaluable competitive advantage when properly respected and integrated with new systems. Most importantly, I discovered that workplace value comes not from adopting every new trend or technology, but from maintaining an unwavering focus on understanding and serving client needs through whatever methods best capture their unique requirements. In an industry obsessed with digital transformation, sometimes the most revolutionary act is insisting on the continued relevance of human observation and handwritten notes. The company eventually recovered from the financial impact of the lost quantum opportunity, though the experience permanently changed our approach to modernization. Rather than sweeping mandates for technological standardization, we now evaluated each process improvement through the lens of client impact and relationship value. Some areas benefited tremendously from digital transformation, while others required the preservation of more traditional approaches that clients had come to trust. So, what is the moral of this story? Perhaps it is that true innovation means knowing which traditions to preserve alongside new methods. Perhaps it is that arrogance costs more than humility, regardless of how impressively it presents itself in board meetings. Or perhaps it is simply that sometimes the most valuable information in a $40 million corporate decision might be found on page 1 of a handwritten notebook that someone took the time to create and review. Before I wrap up this story, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been in a situation where your tried and true methods were dismissed as outdated only to be proven right later? Or are you team digital all the way but? Hit the like button if you have ever kept important handwritten notes, and subscribe for more stories about workplace challenges and triumphs. Share this video with someone who might be facing similar pressures to abandon effective methods just because they are not the newest trend. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most powerful business tool is not the latest app or platform, but simply paying attention and writing things down.